Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. It is an honor and pleasure to be here today to welcome you all at today's group discussion on opportunities and challenges in India's booming economy, organized by Fair Observer, a media organization focused on world affairs. Fair Observer is an independent non-profit media organization that engages in citizen journalism and civic education. The organization has 2,500 contributors from 90 countries, cutting across borders, backgrounds, and beliefs. For today's event, Fair Observer has brought together experts from academia, law, and commerce to discuss the opportunities and challenges presented by India's rapid economic growth. As we are all aware that India is consistently growing at around 7% per annum, it is the fastest growing economy in the world, with the GDP ranked fifth in the world. Economists estimated that India will overtake Germany and Japan by 2028 to occupy the third position after the US and China. To make sense of India's economic outlook, today, Fair Observer Editor-in-Chief Atul Singh and moderator Claire Whitaker would be joining a distinguished panel. Let me end by expressing my gratitude to Atul Singh for this event. I would like to thank all of you present here for making time to be with us. I hope you all have a wonderful evening ahead. I thank you all for your attention. I thank you.
Atul, do you want to say a few words before we start?
First of all, thank you, Sanjay Sharma ji, and thank you everyone at the Nehru Center. Everyone from the head, the top to the bottom. Thank you to Claire for moderating this event, to all my fellow panelists, and thank you to all of you for being here. I will hand it over to Claire to continue our discussion.
Okay, yeah. Also, I just want to say a quick thanks also to Unicorn India Adventures for sponsoring the drinks here. Hopefully you've all had a glass of wine or a glass of juice and you're ready to give our panel a good grilling. So to give a brief introduction, my name's Claire Whitaker. I'm chair of the board here at Fair Observer. This is our first in-person FO Live event in London, so we're very excited to be doing a live as opposed to a virtual one. My background's in journalism. I worked at the BBC and the French news agency AFP, and I now run a media training agency with my business partner here, Helen Percival. So tonight we're joined by a very interesting panel who span all sorts of different sectors. So let's go through them all in person. So first off, we've got Sam Tully here from Quantum Advisors. He is the UK Business Development at Quantum Advisors India, which is an asset managing company. We've heard a little bit from Atul, but he's the founder, CEO, and editor-in-chief at Fair Observer. Professor Atul Shah is a visiting professor at City University, interested in particular ethical finance, I understand, so it'd be interesting to hear about that. And we've got Yogesh Chandra Pandey, who's a partner at Capgemini, who I believe was roped in literally 2 days ago. So thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you all here. As we've already heard, the discussion is opportunities and challenges in India's booming economy. Perhaps we can go through each person just in turn and just hear a little bit about what that means to you and whether it's actually true. Is there a booming economy as much as we might think? Sam, do you want to start?
Thank you. Well, I think there have been a lot of thank yous already, but I also wanted to say thank you to Fair Observer for inviting me to join this panel on this august occasion. I'd particularly like to thank my co-panelists and Fair Observer founder, Atul Singh, and Claire Whitaker, who's put it all together and is moderating the session. Also, many thanks to the assembled audience and my other panelists, some of whom I'm confident know a lot more about the subject than I do. For a start, I'm sitting here under somewhat false pretenses. I was never a student of economics, though I was a student of geography. It has sometimes been said that geographers are like the proverbial jack of all trades but master of none. I would prefer to say that you really cannot understand where India is right now and where it is going to be without an understanding of its historical geography, its political geography, its physical geography, its economic geography, and of course its human geography. The human geography is exemplified in its demographics. It is now the world's most populous nation and one of its youngest. The economic, in its remarkable transition over the past 30 years from economic basket case to a compelling global investment case. The physical geography by its size and the diversity of topography and terrain, and its political geography defined by its democracy, which is a signal difference to its northern neighbour, for one. The historical geography by the powerful and destructive bifurcation of partition, whose legacy has prevailed to this day. My day job for the last 30 years, after qualifying as an accountant in London, has been intimately involved with India's equity markets. But my love affair with India as a country began many years before that, when I spent over half my early years growing up in New Delhi. That perspective has really provided my backdrop to understanding the remarkable transition and transformation that India has undergone since the path-breaking reforms, which also really began just over 30 years ago.
While I hate to remind you, the minute's up.
I'll just be literally one last bit, I know that. While I was growing up, I well remember some of the catchy nation-building slogans that the Indian government used to put on billboards, posters, and the sides of Delhi's buses. Two that particularly stick in my memory resonate today even more than they did then. Unity in diversity, and from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, India is one. Both of these really capture some of India's greatest strengths, but also, if they are undermined perhaps by political or other forces, reflect some of its weaknesses too.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. Professor, can we go to you next? Just a brief overview of the opportunities and challenges, if you can.
Yeah, hi. I would like to echo what Sam has said and just build on it, and I've done a lot of research around it, and I think what is unique about India is its culture, its tradition, its spirit of enterprise, and its dharmic worldview, which is actually inclusive of all living beings, right? So this idea that today we have a planetary crisis, we know that there is a big challenge, we are an interdependent society, including animals, human beings, water, air, etc. That knowledge and awareness about interdependence in the dharmic tradition is 3,000 years old. So therefore, the secret to India's success is it draws from this beautiful well of tradition, including a tradition of enterprise. You may have heard of Jugaad, but I'm a Jain, and Jains are less than 0.5% of India's population, but control 50% of the economy. Now that is because there is a 1,000-year-old tradition of business and enterprise among the Jains. And the whole world is talking about sustainability, but they do not look at the dharmic science of sustainability and its living impact on business and commercial practice and social and economic upliftment. And I have my latest book, Inclusive and Sustainable Finance, captures this and offers the world a new organic theory of finance, which completely draws from that integrity and that tradition that we have. Thank you.
Okay. Yogesh, if I can come to you, you're a partner at Capgemini, so you've got very, very hands-on experience. Just tell us a bit about what sectors you think are booming in India and what challenges them are.
Thank you so much, Claire. I think, yeah, of course. So first of all, I agree with the two panelists. Of course, they know much more than me, right? My knowledge is very limited to my own sector in which I usually work to, which is Capgemini being participating into the IT and ITS kind of services. So in my previous role, I handled the similar kind of business for India, and then I shifted my base to UK and Ireland kind of business. And that's where I will share my own experience as well, right? So to begin with, I'll say that India is most populous nation of the world right now, with 1/4 of the per capita income if you compare with the China. So there is a lot more to do. There is a long way to go, right? So that's a fact which we should definitely accept it. The current dispensation, India has done a marvelous job, and the economy is rightly going onto the right direction with very strong nationalist approach. And in this nationalist approach, I see a number of conglomerates sitting in Indian economy. The Indian conglomerates, I would again insist on to that. They are doing great job and leading this whole part of the development journey, which has its own positive side because they have the very good experience. They have a good financial management, but also comes up with certain kind of lacunas, like they can impact the whole policy making. Also, the kind of national progress which is going on with multiple investment in terms of startups and unicorns perspective as well, right? I read that more than 100 unicorns, more than 300 billion kind of storyline which is behind that. Number of startups which is being pushed in, number of ideas which is getting floated in, but have you heard any startup getting up to a particular size? No. The reason being, because of behind this whole storyline, there are a number of conglomerates, kind of startups getting evolved up to a certain state, sold off out of the business. That's the kind of model, that's the kind of mindset which is going on. We have to go beyond this model if we wanted to sustain this growth story. This is good that we do have a growth story, but it has to be sustainable as well, right? In terms of the specific to IT industry, there are several challenges which is there. Of course, I will just, 2 more seconds. One is definitely in 2008 to 2014, the ITS, the software industry, goes into the software development side, zero hardware development. 2014 onwards, the current dispensation has pushed along on this tail to move forward. But still, I would say that the complete software industry and the technology industry is still stuck in the lower value chain. We have not yet moved in the upper side of the value chain, which is again a critical challenge for all of us, right? And the second challenge which is coming up, we call it as a COLA, right? In terms of all economists, we know that what is a COLA. So that CPI index or COLA index is coming every year. Sitting in the lower bottom of that supply chain, the cost is getting higher and higher and your profitability getting reduced day by day, unsustainable business model. So the only thing which can push it on the higher side is to go for the upper layer in terms of the supply chain. And government has pushed us. They have invested a lot in terms of, so I can give you an example like hardware development. Chip industry is getting in.
We'll go into it in more
Exactly.
detail as the evening goes on. I think the statistic you were talking about was that back in May, it was India had 108 unicorns with a total valuation of $340 billion. So that's a pretty incredible number, isn't it?
Yes.
We will come to you, Atul. There is a panelist that wanted to join us but couldn't because she was called away on business to the US. Can we just hear 1 minute of a video she sent us and then we come to you for a response to that? So Ratun Lahiri is an investor with Unicorn India Ventures, and she's just going to talk literally for a minute about the opportunities she sees in India.
We invest as a fund in startups and entrepreneurs across India, not just from the tier 1 cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, and Bangalore, but increasingly from the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities. We are amazed by their ideas, by their can-do spirit, and by the audacity of their dreams. And as I tell myself repeatedly, this is like a treasure chest that keeps giving. It's an implosion that's happening from within. I'm sitting in New York as I record this today, as we travel to raise a third fund, and I'm telling every investor and potential investor I meet, one is missing something if one is not in India. I truly believe that the show has just begun. Thank you.
Okay, that's it from Ratoon. Unfortunately, she can't be here tonight. And another panellist, Amit Singh, also unfortunately couldn't be here for work reasons. Atul, perhaps we can just pick up on what everyone has said, but particularly Ratoon's little video where she talks about how young and vibrant India is and how if you're not in India as an investor, you're missing out. What do you think of that?
That is true, but not entirely true. So what I mean is that for some investors, India might not be the right investment destination. Also, India does not have the ability to absorb large ticket investments, particularly in the stock market yet. There's a limit, because if too much capital comes in, there is an argument to be made that it's hot money and it could lead to a bubble and then it could lead to a painful crash. So I just say take a deep breath and ati sarvatra varjete in Sanskrit. Too much of anything is a bad thing, so you keep calm and carry on, as you Brits say.
So you're not quite as gushing as perhaps Sam and
No, I'm
Ratoon
not
might
raising a
be.
fund.
Sam, do you have any comments on that?
I absolutely do have comments on that, yes. I mean, one thing I would say is actually if you look at the Indian market, the way it's performed, particularly over the last 20 years, when I used to be a stockbroker doing it, the first thing you heard every day was what is the FII investments in or out, and that determined the mood. What's happened over the last 5-6 years is that the Indian domestic market has come in to take the slack. So I disagree with what Atul is saying there about the fact that foreign investment can't be absorbed. Even when it goes out, if the domestic market is there, it picks up the slack. The other thing I would say is India this year is 15% of global IPOs, 15% for a market that's only 1 or 2% of the global stock market value. So that is taking in new capital. A lot of that is domestic capital as well. And there are many sectors like in the AI and the tech sector where some of these early stage companies that they've been talking about are coming through, which could be the potential, big companies of the future. So I would disagree respectfully with Atul on that point of view, that India's capacity to absorb is enormous. And one last thing I'd add, this year India's been added, well it will be next year, but it's been announced, we'll be going to the JP Morgan Global Bond Index. So even on the bond, on the debt side, you're seeing a big transformation and capacity expansion for India.
Okay, Yogesh, I can see you nodding vigorously. What are your thoughts?
No, I fully agree on to this point that yes, we are, and that's what I said as well, right? That we are progressing well and we are on the curve itself, right? One point which I just wanted to highlight over here as well. In terms of our IT industry side, as I said, right, we are trying to go into the upper side of the value chain, but we are still struggling. The reason being, majority of the new IPs and new developments, we still target our own Indian market as a capital one, right? Where we'll have to look beyond as well. We'll have to create our soft value also coming in out of it, right? So the more our output can go to the other countries as well, specifically to this lot one countries, in the trade parlance, if I say, into the free trade parlance where we use to this terminology, we have to come for this GDPR regulations, the specific security side as well. We have to inculcate this as well. Lot of new ideas in terms of artificial intelligence, machine to machine communication, everything is being developed, but then we'll have to convert it into translate it into the actual use cases, use it for the betterment of our own Indian people, and of course, the moment we will use it, it will be created as a use case, and then the other countries in the other part of the world will adopt it. Like for an example, the digital economy, when we adopted the digital economy after demonetization as a very bold and strong step in India, everywhere the hue and cry, right? But it was successfully launched. There could be debate of the positives as well, but it was successfully launched, and then thereafter it pushed the digital economy. We have, you go to a simple thelawala and buy something and pay it in the 5 rupee by your mobile phone as a digital cashless economy, right? This is seen as a very great advancement for India, like in United States, but they have not yet adopted it. So there are still apprehensions lying in between, and we'll have to simply remove those apprehensions.
Very, very quickly on that. So when you look at digital payments, when you look at Aadhaar, the universal identity, it came in the previous government's era, but it has been rolled out quite efficiently. Direct benefits, payments right to what he said, the telewala, which is literally a chap in a cart with 4 bicycle wheels, and you can pay phone to phone seamlessly. So that all is excellent. The next step for the Indian economy is, and at Fair Observer Intelligence, which is another organization we run, which is on political and geopolitical risk, we have been studying how this could go to, let's say, Southeast Asia first, to East Africa first, maybe not the US, where you have PayPal and Stripe, but the next step for India is to start exporting its services at scale and eventually build manufacturing capacity as well. That's where we have
So you're saying these India unicorns are very sort of domestic focused,
yes, because we have a huge market,
problems.
1.4 billion people. It's a huge market.
Professor.
Can I? Yeah, thank you. I also think that, this idea of growth and rate of growth and fast-paced growth, these are all very Western ideas. And also there is an expense account which for a long time has never been included, like nature, like animals, like equality, like the, health and well-being. So India needs to also understand and play to its own strengths and to also play to its own cultural preservation. So culture, for example, should not become an expense account in growth, which many people today say it is, because it's become very like advertising, sales, and young people are all into alcohol and whatever, drugs, whatever. So India needs to protect its culture and also grow its culture and retain its tradition. So the more it gets that confidence, and as an academic, I must say I'm really sorry to say, and I've been there recently, I'm going there again, that the textbooks of India, the economics textbooks of India are all Western. The methods of teaching are all Western, the case studies, examples. Even India is studied from a Western lens, and that's damaging. That's seriously damaging. Similarly, in terms of community and culture, again, the strengths of India, like if you think of temples, I mean, there's temples in every corner within every half a mile of India. These are temples or mosques or churches. These places need maintenance, they need volunteers, they draw people in, they build social capital. These are fantastic strengths of India. Community is a very strong heart of India. The world is trying to build communities. India already has it, but they are being destroyed as well.
But if I can just interrupt there, Professor, Western points of view might matter when it comes to foreign investment, and that's obviously something maybe Sam can speak about. But
foreign investment is very greedy. It's just there for a quick return and then get out. Foreign investment is not there for a long term. It's still a bit like empire.
Sam, would you like to defend yourself?
Not quite sure how to answer that, but what I would say is actually, I mean, some of the foreign investment has been there for a long time, and institutional investors, some of them have supported India's growth since the early 90s. But there is money that comes in and goes out as well, and money that is driven by global macro issues that have nothing to do with India as well. The other thing that I would touch upon, that again reverts something to what Professor Atul has just touched on, is the environment and nature. And that is a really serious issue, because you just look at the pollution levels in Delhi, which are 10 times the maximum levels that are normally permitted. You look at the whole issue of climate change in a country that is very reliant on domestic and very dirty coal, as well as oil imports to fuel this growth. There are big questions there, and India's actually addressing them. The government has got plans, but if you don't fix climate change in India, you might as well give up everywhere else.
Atul, you wanted to say something?
So we have to distinguish between different kinds of foreign investment. So the Japanese have invested a long time. For instance, the bullet train, that is a huge Japanese investment, $15 billion. That's not short-term, Professor. So I think if we tar all foreign investment with the same brush, then as a capital-starved economy, India will be in deep duress. So my take is that some of the investment obviously can engage in asset stripping. Some private equity investment in particular can be extremely damaging for the long-term growth of the country. It's speculative. We are sitting in England where in 1992, George Soros made $1 billion of profits in a day, and the pound crashed out of the exchange rate mechanism. You could argue that was Thatcher's fault, that was Major's fault. They went into the ERM without discussion with the Germans. They went at a rate that was too high. Karl Otto von Pohl is on camera saying that all of that is true. But at the end of the day, that speculation didn't benefit Britain. Yes, Britain rebounded. That's a separate story. But the important thing is that foreign investment is not monolithic. And even some short-term foreign investment can benefit. So we have to be careful about that. When it comes to the environment, yes, we know that numerous reports from lots of different academics, international agencies talk about the drop in groundwater and the pollution of the surface water. Sam has already mentioned air pollution, so I'm not going to go into that. That is horrific. But if you look at water, groundwater tables are dropping so fast that one day we may run out of water. That's a risk.
Well, listen, our next talk will be about sustainability. Let's focus for now on the economy. We're going to go to questions in a few minutes' time, so if you have something up your sleeve, just have a think about it. We'll come to you in just a few minutes. I just want to try and get a better sense of what foreign investors see as great opportunities and what they fear. I don't know who's best to answer that point on how foreign investors feel about things.
Actually, I did write down a few sort of pros and cons, and I think they are very, very, exactly. They are very, they're very quick. Deep and diversified, this is the pros.
This is the pros.
Deep and diversified continental capital markets, broad as well. Consumption-driven economy, significant domestic growth drivers, demographics, which we've touched on. It's not China, that's a positive. Cost of capital is going down, tailwinds from infrastructure investment, capex cycle turning, transparent policy making, data and the digital transformation we've also touched on, the formalization of the economy, greater global engagement, geopolitical prominence. So those are just a few things that go positively. On the cons, education and skills challenge, that's a major issue. 10 million people join the workforce every year. If they're not going to get jobs, it'll be a demographic disaster, not a demographic dividend. Female workforce participation. Democracy can be a two-edged sword. Legal system mired by delays. Inequitable growth is a major thing, still reliant on the monsoon. I mean, there are a lot of other things. A lot of the positives have negatives on the other side.
It's interesting that Sam didn't use the word Modi.
I was waiting for Modi as well. I was waiting for that.
And unfortunately, living in the West, and I read the FT as well, regularly FT is attacking Modi. Once in a while you get just recently there's a slightly positive article. But, Modi is a Gujarati. He comes from an entrepreneurial tradition, and he first worked in Gujarat and now he's translating that formula to the country. And I agree with all the challenges, but I also say it's 1.4 billion people. The rupee note has got 17 languages. If you look at the back of the rupee note, 17 languages. I use it in my finance class, my first finance class. I want to show to the students that the culture of finance is not monolithic, is extremely diverse. But actually the textbooks of economics and finance are completely monolithic. So they are actually completely wrong against the reality of finance. And even in a family, 5 people will look at money differently. So we need
You mentioned
together,
Modi. Obviously, the FT and others will say that he's too autocratic and this is a problem for the economy.
And fundamentalist and
so what are your views
extreme. You look at the data. Inequality. You talked about Atul spoke about the Aadhaar card. How many people have been lifted out of poverty? Yes, inequality is still there, But you know what Modi has done is cut out the middlemen, the sales tax, the GST, all the kinds of reforms. But it is tough. It's such, I mean, it's not easy to manage a country of 1.4 billion. And anything that goes wrong, immediately Modi. That's how the Western media...
Yogesh, let's have a few words from you, and then we'll go to a question.
Yeah. No, I think no, first of all, the term investment itself is something, terminology where you invest something in the anticipation of getting something out of it, right? Nobody invests with a zero profitability. So whether it's a foreign investment or a domestic investment, let's stop diversifying between them, that they are separate. Investment is investment. Anybody who invests will earn. If somebody says that he is doing for charity, I'm sorry. Being a corporate, I'm coming from a corporate, but it's pretty clear that if we are going to do some activity at some location, that's a clear objective of getting something out of it, right? So even if a foreign national goes back there and invests something, the profitability is there. And that profitability comes from Indian market because the people are doing hard work, because the technology is getting evolved, because the social fabric is supporting them, because there is a current dispensation, which Professor has just mentioned, and that dispensation has proven to the world that it is not just making a plan, it is a plan which can get executed and yields the result. So that's the positivity which has already been built in, and that's the basic need for the confidence of any investor. That is prevailing over there, and that's the fundamental.
Could I just add one thing, just going back to Atul's point? Democracy can never be the purview of one man or one woman, and as soon as it becomes that, it's no longer democracy. And that, I think, is what we have to be conscious of, particularly with elections, which is one thing that investors are really focusing on. We've got state elections, which are taking place right now, which will be declared in the beginning of December, and then next year there are general elections. So watch that very carefully and see how those elections are conducted, and that the opposition are given, a fair crack at things totally
All right.
open.
Well,
It's a cultural shift which is important, which he has brought in, right? And that cultural shift, whether he stays or goes, the cultural shift will remain over there. I come from Varanasi, he knows that very well. There, the only fundamental point that we don't obey any rules. And there I saw people used to stop at red light. That's a change. That's a cultural change which is coming.
All right. Do we have any questions from anyone here tonight? Yeah. And if you could mention who you are and who the question is for, that would be helpful.
I'm John Aarons, and I'm just interested in outbound investment. I wonder if the panel would say a word about Indian outbound investment. The Tata Group, for example, famously have made a number of big acquisitions, like Jaguar Land Rover, recently committed to investing in a gigafactory here in the UK, a battery factory for automotive sector. Does the panel think that we'll see any more outbound investment, or are there new conglomerates, groups emerging who are likely to be acquisitive, for example, in Europe?
Who's that for? Anyone in particular?
No one in particular. The panel.
It's a very interesting point, John. Thank you very much for your question, because the Tata Motors, their results just came out, and Jaguar Land Rover on these recent quarterly results was 2/3 of their profit. And that's amazing given the journey it's sort of been through. So a success story more than the steel, and a global brand. So an Indian group with a global brand. I do think that you will see more other companies outwardly investing. The big conglomerates have done quite a bit of that. But it will be interesting to see whether some of these smaller companies that are coming up will be moving more of their focus overseas as well.
Existing conglomerates are already taking up, so if you see, like in Australia, there are certain acquisitions which has been done with the existing conglomerate in India. So they are going big. The real challenge, which I highlighted in my first statement as well, the new conglomerates are the new startups, are the new unicorns which are coming up. If they can get into that shape, that will be the really game-changing story.
Atul, you wanted to say?
Very quickly, yes, we will see more acquisitions, because even now it is difficult for India to develop technology. So often these acquisitions will be to acquire technology and talent and brands. So it is inevitable, as the economy grows, that there'll be more foreign acquisitions by Indian players.
Okay, any more questions? Nandita?
My name is Nandita Sehgal, so this is a question for the panel. So I've been an investor in India for a number of years, and what I really, the opportunities are well discussed and vast for institutional investors and corporates, etc. But really, what about ease of doing business? What about the practical the practical things that need to happen, opening bank accounts, tax registration, putting money in, repatriating money out, these things are not spoken about. So people take these leaps, look at the Indian market for these opportunities, but actually get stuck on the ease of business doing.
So we're talking about red tape here.
Yeah, I'll answer that. I've written a lot about it. I'm not popular with the Indian bureaucracy because I think it is colonial, it is extractive, it is rent-seeking, it is parasitic, it is inefficient, it is corrupt, it is dysfunctional, and it needs bloody reform.
Atul, before you hand over the mic or drop the mic, just give us some examples of what you mean. Like what
Nandita,
kind of,
I give
what
you
kind
the
of
example.
problems?
Very simple example. So if you want a registration, all right, if you want anything done, if you have a factory, so you need clearances. There is no time-bound system of doing
Are we just talking about
clearances.
time, or are we talking about corruption?
Both. You see, the point is the file does not move until you lubricate the officer's palm.
Is that still the case now?
It is still the case. It is less so than before because remember, we had a colonial bureaucracy, and under Jawaharlal Nehru, in his infinite wisdom, we chose socialism, which meant that the colonial bureaucracy now had humongous powers and became even more powerful than pre-1947, specifically the Indian Administrative Service, which heads the Central Board of Secondary Education, the National Council of Education, Research and Training, suitably Stalinist sounding. And of course, they waltz into the finance ministry too. They can be in culture, then agriculture, then finance. And so there's no domain expertise. So if the file goes anywhere, and this doesn't begin just with the IS, it's from the lower bureaucracy as well. So there is no time-bound limit to clear a file. And so there is no accountability. And so the biggest worry, and this is not me, this is a podcast on Fair Observer by Sharat Kumar Sarraf, who's the world's biggest manufacturer of oil drum caps. He makes 65 million a year. So the oil drums have a cap, and he is a manufacturer. You can listen to his podcast, and he says doing business in China was so much easier. And in fact, he said, at the practical level, China is far more transparent, business-friendly, and efficient. And never in my years have I been asked for a single bribe. So China has its problems. Xi Jinping is basically destroying the legacy of Deng Xiaoping. But India's problem is taming its bureaucracy. And it has done a lot after 1991, when India liberalized under Narasimha Rao. India did a second batch of reforms under Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who ran a BJP-led coalition government and began the infrastructure building program. And India has done a fair bit right now, especially with the goods and sales tax, and this is the point I'll end on, in which we have become an economic union for the first time, a common market for the first time. Because in 1947, we were a political union, but you couldn't even, in some instances, sell a product in another district, leave aside a state. So India had many, many, many markets, and if you were transporting something from, let's say, Coimbatore to Chandigarh, right? We have Pranjula here, who's from Punjab originally, and if you were transporting, yeah, she can, thank you very much for helping us organize this. She's the lady who's done a lot of work and deserves a lot of credit. If you were transporting, you were paying bribes at basically every checkpoint. So the GST, which was an idea mooted by a previous government, brought in by the Modi government, has for the first time made us a new-style economic union. So the power of bureaucrats has lessened, but it's still there.
In theory, then the corruption should...
Practicality, it has come down. Earlier, you had to pay 27 bribes. Now you only have to pay 7. But why 7? It should be 0.
And there is additional advantage is that now at state level as well, the investment windows has been created. And there is a specific secretary has been appointed just for the investment point of view. So if that route is being taken, your hassle will be far more less. Of course, not zero.
Can I just bring the
tend to agree
professor
with-
in, because you talk about grassroots
Yeah.
entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah,
it sounds
yeah.
really positive. So is it
Yeah,
something that
I mean,
you recognise?
No, I accept what has been said about bureaucracy, but I also look at the global picture. Remember, India was the G20 president last year, and it gave the world the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. India has a vision, a local and a global vision. And that is something that not many countries can even boast, right? I mean, you know, it's an inclusive vision. It's not there. It's got a lot of challenges. But I feel that also, and at a micro level, leadership, right? Leadership is a very popular subject in business education. But the main leadership model is about power, about control, and about greed, right? That is in most of the textbooks. They will, like I was in finance leadership, there is no book which talks about what good finance leadership looks like, apart from mine, of course. and the reason is that you cannot talk about good finance leadership without talking about ethics, right? Whereas India, in its soul, in its psyche, starts from ethics and has a conscience and has a tradition and has a sense of intergenerational equity. And it is breeding leaders. I mean, Jugaad, you know, there is a kind of, to fit into India, you know, you need to learn 3-4 languages. People know that instinctively. So there are strengths, there are weaknesses, but I think if India starts to also play a global stage in terms of leadership, we also have all much to gain from. And you know, you look at the leader of Microsoft or Google. Why is it that Indians are going into such senior positions? Because of that cultural software that we have, which is never recognized, but is a huge strength. Thank you.
So, Professor, what you've said, the strengths of India, they are cultural. Communities like yours, the Jains, they are in finance. The right-hand man of Warren Buffett is a Jain. There was a Jain who was the CEO of Deutsche Bank.
Yeah.
Accepted.
Yeah.
But the state of India is a colonial. And that is the dichotomy. So on the one hand, the strength comes from the culture and people work around the state.
Yes.
But the state ties 2 stones to each leg.
Yeah.
And the transaction costs of business are extraordinarily high, higher than any major economy in the world. And a lot of Indian genius is spent on circumventing the babu. Babu is a derogatory word for a bureaucrat, instead of actually doing creative stuff.
Atul, could I just take one point? First of all, that was a really good question from my wife, so thank you. But the other point I would make is what you've seen in the last 30 years in India is where you've lifted that dead weight of government. If you look at sectors like the IT sector, the government wasn't involved until the early 2000s, and it was, you know, a testament to India's entrepreneurial spirit. So what you see progressively is removal of layers of bureaucracy, of getting around issues, and you've seen that in the stock market where they moved from paper settlement to paperless settlement, where you've seen, you know, I mean, what I'm saying is India's strength lies in the future strength, and partly that there are still some of these layers, and if you remove that, the sky's the limit.
Okay, I think we'll probably have to go to another question unless you have a very brief comment.
A very important point. I think now we've moved away from the socialist model to a model where chief ministers, forget the prime minister, chief ministers are arguing about growth. Communist Kerala, which was the first elected communist government in the world, believe it or not. In India, we elected communists to power. And those communists are asking for foreign investment. Surprise, surprise. Move over, and this is the west and southwest tip of India, move over to the east, Tamil Nadu. The chief minister is called Stalin. And Stalin is talking about a $1 trillion economy. When Stalin starts talking about markets, you know the country has changed.
Okay, fair enough. Any more comments or questions? Perhaps this chap here.
Thank you. My name is Nick Watson. So I found what the panel said about entrepreneurship and innovation and unicorns and startups very interesting, and it's very clear that amongst India's 1.4 billion people, there is a huge amount of intellectual capital. But what about intellectual property? If investors, foreign investors, are going to invest seriously in Indian technology, Indian innovation, they will need to feel the confidence that their money is going into not only something that is new and innovative, but also something that is underpinned by a system of intellectual property that will help them to safeguard their rights and help navigate that innovation into the global markets. I don't know whether the panel have a view on this, but...
That's a fantastic point. And have you heard the word tech coolies?
No.
So Indians are the tech coolies of the world. So the intellectual property is owned by America, for example, if you think of Microsoft or Google or all of that. So yes, we need to capture back that intellectual capital, and we do have tremendous intellectual capital. It was Vikram Sarabhai in the 1960s working with Nehru who built this grand scientific vision for India and helped build institutions like the IITs of India and the business schools like the IIMs of India, which have actually been the greatest boon to India today, because that science base, that technology base came from a Jain visionary who was a scientist, Vikram Sarabhai, who closely worked with Nehru to build these institutions which brought India the strength that it has today. But it also has to capture the copyright. The world is also trying to capture the patent the seeds of India, the agriculture of India, especially America, and the American kind of science companies. So we need to be very careful to keep that intellectual.
If I may, that's exactly my point, which is that India needs its own way to capture that intellectual property. That as these women and men in Bangalore, for example, are innovating their hearts out, they need to have a system, a process under that, where they can file their own patents, they can make sure that they keep things as trade secret or whatever, and they can innovate into white space in a global sense. So I guess what I'm asking is whether that framework either exists or if it's starting to be developed.
So Nick,
It takes a while to dismantle empire, my friend.
Well,
So Nick, I'll answer the question. By the way, thank you for coming. Nick is an advisor of Fair Observer. Thank you for being here. Nick, India, as you know, when you talk to CEOs, American CEOs, is a far safer place to invest than in China. Indians tend to be respectful of intellectual property. There is a regime. I think where India needs reform is having its own robust intellectual property regime. India also needs a competition commission that works. The Competition Commission of India is headed by an Indian Administrative Service officer with no domain expertise, not an economist, not a lawyer, an amateur who knows very little. So we need those institutional reforms. We need domain expertise. And I think as more politicians